Today I'm going to talk about four things. I'm going to talk about hip-hop and homosexuality. I'm going to propose a formula to allow Britain to clamber out of the well of perpetual failure that is Eurovision Song Contest. I'm going to talk about the aforementioned big willies. And then I'm going to talk about trains. My essay is not solely a feminist essay. It does not argue for some wonderfully highbrow abandonment of postmodernist, Christaven, Bridget Jones feminism. My essay instead is about curiosity. It is about curiosity of inclusion and exclusion of sexuality in music. Music, I believe, is one of the most sexually inclusive areas within society. Naturally, inclusion and exclusion means that there are boundaries of sexuality, a kind of glass ceiling in which characters in the social spotlight will shatter. Characters change and revolutionise the way that we perceive whatever it is that they challenge. Characters from Cole Porter to Liberace, Elton John, even Will Young, for goodness sakes. Each one of these characters is able to utilise their art, their music, to challenge this conformity, transgressing music into a political or even philosophical field of interest. A recent example of this is Conchita Wurst, the winner of the 2014 Eurovision Song Contest. Of course, it's not necessarily her music, but her appearance. Regardless of this, Eurovision Song Contest creates a stage of controversy each year and has a habit of dividing the progressivists and the conservatives across an entire continent. The buzz of controversy turned Eurovision into a ratings boom, with 195 million people worldwide watching. The idea of inclusion and exclusion can be seen in Russia, as it was totally divided. MP Valery Rashkin, a communist politician, stated, "I watched the results of last Saturday's Eurovision with deep pain. Giving first place to a bearded lady is a slight on humanity and suicide." Hashtag Prove You're Not Conchita trended throughout Russia and some of Eastern Europe, where bearded men would shave in protest against the transgendered singer. It seems Eurovision has a habit, or at least the winners do, of challenging these inclusion and exclusion of sexuality. In 1990s, the Israeli transsexual one. ABBA have become a gay icon and an utter phenomenon within Eurovision community. It is of my opinion, therefore, that Britain should produce and challenge the sexuality that exists. We have a nervousness. We tend to shy away from controversy. This will allow us to win Eurovision. Going back to hip-hop, Trisha Rose, an esteemed hip-hop academic, states that, quote, "Hip-hop culture emerged as a source for youth of an alternative identity, to create a sense of belonging where competition remains a never-ending battle for status. For example, a sense of masculinity within violent gang culture was a signifier of this high status. Mac rap, a subgenre of hip-hop, emphasises the boasting of extreme wealth, money flaunting, heterosexual virulent images. A term for this kind of behaviour has spawned from criticism, called big willyism. The bigger willy you have, the more heterosexual and wealthy you are. This equates to this idea of virulence, and obviously as a tool of disparagement, the antithesis is homosexuality. This depreciation has permeated throughout the whole of hip-hop culture, and therefore homosexuality is considered subordinate and inferior. For example, Eminem's, I'm sorry for the fruity language, "I will knock you fucking faggots the fuck out." I realise how unbelievably pretentious that sounds, by the way, sorry. Music can be used, therefore, as a tool of resistance, establishing a place within culture and society. Yet, paradoxically, hip-hop oppresses homosexuality. This is why people like Macklemore, Frank Ocean, are so fundamental, because they challenge this idea of boundary. They're constantly pushing and shattering that glass ceiling, as Conchita Wurst did in Europe. there is certainly an intrinsic anti-gay sentiment that exists within hip-hop, and I'm just going to show you a few musical examples now as to how these artists, I'm really only going to focus on Macklemore, have challenged it in this sense. The style of rapping is very important. There's generally two types of rapping, and I know my accent is very silly anyways, but I am going to rap for you, I hope you don't mind. There's the rhythmic style of rapping, which is Eminem, so you've got, I'm going to click as well, to Trailer Park Girls go round the outside, round the outside, round the outside. Or you've got KRS, clap your hand everybody, you get what it takes. I'm getting into this a bit too much, sorry. But Macklemore has something called speech effusive rap, so it's a narration, it's a personal story of his own experience with sexuality. He starts with, in the 3rd grade I thought that I was gay because my uncle was, and I kept my room straight. This idea of personability, the fact that it's so subjective, is then changed in the chorus as he's turned it into an objective song. There's a strict sort of sung structure. So he's trying to create a sort of universal plight of equality and tolerance in his song. Now to go to something more musical, the ideas of chords. He's sampling the impressions, People Get Ready. I don't know whether you know it, it's been done so many times. It's People Get Ready, there's a train coming, you don't need no ticket, just get on board. It was written during the 1960s, during the Black Civil Rights Movement, and everywhere that it's been imported into a song, or those chords, it's sort of interlinking this political activism. So the ideas of the chord progression that goes throughout the song perpetually sort of harks back to this tolerance and equality. In terms of the train, trains are obviously something of social progress. We're trying to break through and move forward as a collective bunch of people. I've never noticed it, but there are so many motifs within the song, and I'm going to play one for you now, of how the train is used. He uses the chords as to perpetually sort of drive through the song, but I'm actually going to play something, and I'll point out to you, there's actually a train that sort of goes through one of the verses of the song.
Press play, don't press pause. Progress march on with the veil over our eyes. We turn our back on the cars till the day that my uncles can be united by law. The kids are walking around the hallway.
It's only very brief, but just by importing something like that into a song, you're really getting a firm grip as to how he utilises music to challenge the social conventions or challenge the intrinsically gay anti-sentiment that exists within hip-hop. And therein is the end of my